So, hi everyone. We're here with Malcolm Byrne now for the next installment of Ógra in conversation with. So, Malcolm, how are you?
Not too bad. Thank you very much. It's kind
Good.
of strange times for everybody, but we will get through this.
Absolutely, yeah. So, Malcolm, I'm just going to do a quick intro for you. So, it might take me a while. I have a lot of notes here.
Okay.
so you're from Gorey. You were Vice President of the National Youth Council of Ireland. You were Education Officer with the USI. You were on the executive of the European Union Students' Union. You were named one of the top 40 under 40 in the EU. You worked as the head of communications for the Higher Education Authority of Ireland. You were elected to Gorey Town Council in 1999 at the age of 25. Then you were elected to Wexford County Council in 2009, and you ran in the 2016 general election and Shannon election that year. You were unsuccessful that time, but then you ran in the European election in 2019 as well as running in the local elections. And then you successfully contested the by-election in 2019, and then you contested the general election in 2020, and you were unsuccessful in retaining your seat, but then you were elected to Shannon on the Cultural and Educational panel. So I think if I'm right, that was you contested every election possible, bar a presidential one, in under 300 days.
Yeah, that's pretty true, and that's a very good reading of my Wikipedia page as well.
I did know most of them offhand. Yeah, so we just wanted to sit down and have a chat. So I suppose you've had a long career. I suppose you've spent 20 years, you've had 20 years of a political career, and you were involved in activism and student politics before that. So I suppose, how did you get your start in politics, first of all, as a student, and then how did you make the move to Fianna Fáil?
So I kind of always been involved in politics. I mean, as a child and as a teenager, we would have. I don't come from a family involved in politics, but we would always talked about politics around the dinner table. And then growing up, the events I would have remembered would have been the Berlin Wall falling, Central and Eastern Europe suddenly freeing itself from the shackles of communism and a kind of a unity in Europe, Nelson Mandela being set free, the peace process in the North, the Good Friday Agreement, which to me on this island is still hugely important. Its potential hasn't been realised, but things are certainly a lot better now than from what they were in the past. So those were the kind of things that I would have been interested in. I did law in UCD, and then was elected as education officer with the Students' Union there, and then education officer with USI. So I've been involved in a lot of student issues. And one of the things I was quite passionate about was the whole question of access to education, and particularly for those from socioeconomically disadvantaged groups, but also the whole question of student participation. So even during the 90s, I would have been involved in the campaign around getting statutory recognition for student councils in our schools, and when the Education Act in '97 was passed, that finally happened. So then in 1999, I kind of faced the general electorate in a wider way by running for, as it was, Gorey Town Commission, became Gorey Town Council, which was the local body here in Gorey, and served on that and on Wexford County Council, and I think one thing is that some people might know I'm a very strong advocate for local government. A problem we have in Ireland is that we've too much central administration, and we should be looking at devolving a lot more decision-making powers down to our local authorities.
Absolutely, yeah. And I suppose politics in many ways can be a difficult game, but especially when you enter it at such a young age, and I suppose your personal life takes a hit then as well, because I think anyone who does politics right puts everything they can into it. So obviously your personal relationships, your friendships, everything like that do take a hit. So how did you find that at such a young age?
Yeah, it's difficult. A lot of my friends thought then that I was mad getting involved in politics, and some of them think I still am. But I think anyone who does get involved understands, I suppose, yeah, the buzz of it, but also how you can make a real difference in your community or for your country. That's kind of always motivated me. Yeah, personal relationships, it's more difficult. Obviously, because I'm a gay man, it's a little bit more difficult on that front. Again, I think people who are outside politics often don't realise, the extent of the sacrifice, the amount of time that is involved in political life. I certainly say to people, you don't do it for the money. There are easier ways than politics to earn money, but you do because you believe in your community and in what's going on in your area, and also because, look, if you feel passionate about wanting to change things, and I certainly did, that's where you get involved.
Absolutely, yeah. And I suppose, like, the question politicians get asked a lot, and I think a lot of people automatically think they know the answer, and it's usually, like you say, some people would say, oh, they're only in it for the money, or they're only in it for this, but why do you do what you do, Malcolm?
I do it because I genuinely, I know this sounds odd, I get a buzz about being able to improve, either helping individuals or, for me, changing a policy that will help things in the community in which I live. So when I've seen over the years, and it's not always about the big headlines, it's often about the small things behind the scenes. When you can influence a piece of legislation, when you can help out a constituent with a particular issue, that kind of motivates me. It's difficult. You're not going to change things overnight. There are a lot of things I would have been involved in as a student. It took many years before you saw the change happen. There are lots of other things that I still want to see happen. And it may be many years from now before we finally get resolution on a lot of those issues. But you got to stick in there and you've got to contribute. And also, I mean, in politics, you meet lots of really interesting people, and people who are committed to change. You might not always agree with them, but by engaging with them and listening to them, you can, your own ideas and your own thinking can evolve.
Absolutely. And I suppose you've had a long time in politics, and I suppose it's hard to pinpoint something, but of anything you've achieved in politics, what would you say stands out for you the moment you achieve something and you said, like, this is what it's about?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's stuff on a local level here in Gorey, which, I pushed for the development of our town park. I've been a big believer in terms of improving the railway services here, and those are the things I've been involved in. I guess something I've always been passionate about is around education, and I like to think that, along with others, I've contributed towards particularly the opening up of higher education to greater numbers over the years, raising awareness around education issues. That's been something that motivated me in my professional career, and as you mentioned, I worked with the Higher Education Authority, which is a great organisation. But I'd like to think that I have contributed toward a situation now whereby we have seen higher education a lot more accessible for people, and that there is a recognition of its value. And if there's something I'm proud of, that I've been a cog in that wheel that's allowed that to move things forward. I think as a society, it's something we often don't kind of reflect on, about how much we've changed. In the 60s, only about 1 in 20 of every 18 to 20-year-olds went on into higher education. By 1980, that grew to about 1 in 5. Now, over 3 in 5 go to our universities, institutes, technology, our colleges, and many others also go on training programs into post-leaving cert courses. So, as a society, we've transformed. We've a hell of a lot more opportunities in education and training. And the reality is, because of a lot of the technological changes we're going to see in the decades ahead, we're going to need to constantly upskill and reskill.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned at the start, you contested 5 elections in under 300 days, which I think for anyone is bonkers. I know, but I suppose for me, being on the European campaign with you, and you'd been a councillor for so many years, and in a relatively small area, So I suppose taking the move from Gorey and Wexford County Council to a 12 county constituency, like how did you find that? How different did you find the European campaign?
Well, I will point out to you that Wexford is a bigger county than Waterford, so
but Gorey, representing Gorey.
Yeah, well, it's one of the, I mean, Gorey is, and I'm hugely proud of it, it's one of the fastest growing towns in the country. Went from, in the mid-90s, Gorey had a population of about 4,500 as a town, to where it's about 11,000 today, and that's not counting, a lot of the hinterland. So yeah, so it was a challenge, but I'm passionately committed to Europe. I think if we look at the world today, where it's moving towards a G2 dominated by China on one side and the United States on the other, I don't share the value of either of those countries. I think that we need another voice at the table, and the only voice that can realistically be at that global table is the European Union. And I think in terms of values around democracy and the rule of law and human rights, Europe needs to speak out on those issues. And that's as much a challenge for inside the European Union, where I'd be very concerned about what's happening in Poland and Hungary, as being a bulwark against increased authoritarianism and abuse of human rights around the world. So look, I was always interested in it. I frankly was disappointed with our party's approach to the European elections. We knew when the elections were coming up, it wasn't like it was a surprise. We knew that it was going to be sometime in the middle of 2019. I had discussions in 2018 saying, look, I'm interested, I want to do this, but I think whether it was me or whoever the other candidates are, we should have had them selected before Christmas. We should have had a planned campaign. That said, it was a great honor for me to be selected. I knew it was going to be an uphill struggle because you're up against big brand names. And yes, as a councillor, it's a lot more of a challenge to try to build that brand. But we ran a very good and positive campaign. We forced some of the discussion on some of the issues. Look, the result would have been better had I won a seat, but I was pretty happy coming in with nearly 70,000 first preferences. So I think it was about making a mark. I'm obviously happy Billy Kelleher was elected. I think Fianna Fáil, we've two very good MEPs in Billy and in Barry Andrews. Barry has a particularly strong record, obviously, in terms of human rights and the developing world, and I think that's something as a party we should be very proud of. But I don't think we should apologise in any way for wanting to get stuck in and helping to shape the European project. I think if anything, this current crisis, as a lot of others, show the importance, one, of showing solidarity, but also of nations cooperating, particularly in global bodies like the European Union and the United Nations, that working together we're going to be able to solve some of these global problems, because this pandemic, it's affecting every country. Climate change will affect every country. How technology is going to shape what we do is going to affect every country. So it's really important that we work together, we engage in research together, and we look at trying to come up with global solutions to problems that affect us all.
Absolutely. And I think after, I suppose, 20 years in public life and the 5 elections in 9 months.
It makes me sound old now, Darren.
But sure, well, no, I don't think so. I think we don't need to look at the poster. And I think, but you obviously have a lot of stories from the Canvas Trail, and I think it's an idea of yours to actually publish a book using some of those stories. So I suppose if you could tell us one funny or one of your most memorable encounters on the canvas.
Oh God, it's I do recall the bizarre. I mean, people will be quite familiar now around some of the issues around 5G, and I think, look, we've got to look about how we can use technology to advance things. But I do recall canvassing in a particular town with a woman who raised the issue of 5G with me, and I wasn't as familiar with it as a concern as it's kind of grown in the last year. And this woman said she was very concerned about going out because there was 5G testing going on, and she lifted off her woolly hat and she had tinfoil wrapped around her head, which I didn't I wasn't quite sure how to react, but I nodded sagely and kind of moved on. Yeah, I mean, my memory of all the campaign is I suppose it's all the great people that you know, you kind of get that come along. You know, when during the by-election, there were lots of fun stories, including about how biscuits had to be hidden in the office from certain characters who'd come in who'd demolish all the biscuits whenever they were in there. But no, we just it was yeah, it was all a really good and positive experience. I think you know, those of us who are, if you like, who are the face of politics, who are on the posters, who are the elected representatives who speak out, you know, we're kind of the public face, but in many ways, a lot of those who are the heroes of the campaigns, and this doesn't just apply to Fianna Fáil, it applies to all parties, are those who go out, who knock on the door, who do up the social media posts, who make the telephone calls, who organise the canvasses, the volunteers who get nothing out of it, except, you know, to be able to help a friend or somebody who they believe in get elected, but also to be able to better shape their communities, their country, or indeed their planet.
Absolutely. And I suppose another thing that's always interested, and we've had a few conversations about it in Ógra, and especially in the last few years, you sign up to put your name on the ballot paper because you believe in something, or you want to make a difference in your area, or you know, you want to make a difference in the European Union or anything like that. You don't necessarily sign up to have your personal life and, you know, your home life put in newspapers. And I think especially of late, it's become an issue for a lot of politicians, that the focus is moving from what they're actually going to do in terms of policy to what's going on at home. So I suppose, have you found that difficult, that you're, you know, more than you bargained for in your life becoming public?
Yeah, I mean, you get to deal with it. It is becoming a lot more personalised. I've no doubt there have been some political parties who almost organise a targeted campaign against politicians. I've noticed it. The language has become cruder and crasser and a lot more personalised. I don't think that should put, you know, people off politics. I think the bots who are out there, I think it says more about them. I frequently annoy them by correcting their spelling and grammar. So and that probably irritates them more than anything else. But for the most part, just ignore them. I think it's more important, and I think more people are interested in an exchange of ideas. And I mean, I have huge respect for it. There are people that I politically strongly disagree with, but if they come forward with an intelligent argument that you can, you know, debate back and forwards, yeah, sometimes you can change your mind. Sometimes your opinion can modify by looking at something from a different angle. But I do think that it is a lot more difficult in politics. I think it's probably tougher for women. I mean, some of the language used against females in politics has been especially crude, and you know, it's just kind of shocking. There's a responsibility on all of us in politics to stand up against it, to stand up against the fake news. But I think the other challenges are on digital literacy, because you can only regulate so far. I think part of it has to be around people's own awareness, that they interrogate everything that they might read on social media. And what I'd like to think, you know, one of the things coming out of this crisis is that we've seen the value of experts, we've seen the value of research, we've seen the value of trusted news stories. So I'd hope that we would continue to place value on those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose for you then, being so busy, and you know, you're in the Shannon now, you're obviously at home dealing with any issues that are coming up, but how would you spend your downtime, Malcolm, when you get it? So
I run a bit. I've 30 marathons under my belt. I'm not. Don't worry, the Kenyans and the Ethiopians have nothing to fear from me. I'm certainly not a fast runner, but even during this downtime, as much for my mental health as physical health, I try to get out almost every day, even just to do a short run of a couple of kilometers to keep my head clear. I've also had a really strong interest in the arts. So in theatre, in going to art exhibitions, even in taking part in plays and musicals. I have something people may not know. I have an Association of Irish Musical Societies nomination for Best Supporting Actor from a number of years ago with Gore Musical Society, and would have taken part in various drama festivals all over the years, and know a lot of people through drama festivals as a result. I suppose then, in many ways, it was unsurprising I was nominated to contest the Shannon by the Drama League of Ireland. So I'd have a really strong interest in visual art and going to galleries. And I think one thing to reflect on is, if you look at during this difficult period, it's people who are involved in the arts and music that are in many ways seeing us through it all. It's people are logging onto Netflix, they're looking at YouTube. It's artists and musicians that are kind of keeping us sane through this period. I think we've got to appreciate and value that. I love to travel. I don't think we're going to be doing, certainly not a lot of international travel for the next while. But if people ask me, my indulgence, I don't play golf. I'm not interested in having the latest model car. But I suppose if I can get the excuse to travel, that's what I'll do.
Brilliant. So I think that's all for in-depth, Malcolm. So now we have a quick fire 5 round.
Okay.
If you're ready.
This is the bit that I was kind of worried about.
Yeah. I think it'll be fine. Nothing too hard anyway. I'm not going to ask you about government formation.
Okay.
So Malcolm, are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Okay, so Malcolm, Barry's or Lions tea?
Lions.
Okay, so a politician from another party you admire?
Grace O'Sullivan.
Favorite place in Ireland, and you cannot say Wexford?
Favorite place, West Cork.
Describe your life so far using 3 film titles.
Oh, using 3. Not my favorite film, but using 3 film titles. Invictus. I suppose dealing with some people in politics, The Godfather springs to mind. And Invictus is probably the inspiring one, and a third. Oh my God.
For putting you under pressure.
Yeah. Because I can tell you my favorite films, but to spend my life maybe my experience in local government, 12 Years a Slave.
Brilliant. Thanks a million for sitting down with us, Malcolm.
And okay.
We hope you stay safe, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks, Sergey.